Chapter 63 to 68. Damn you kid. As the chest was already cut open and blood was spurting out, Cloud Village's Jonin ninja became weaker and weaker. Eventually, his body fell to the ground with no signs of life left. Kuroto staggered a few steps, then sat on the ground, panting heavily. The corpses of 16 Cloud Shinobi fell around him. The entire forest area was in a mess, clearly indicating the signs of a fierce battle that occurred not long ago. After resting up a bit, Kuroto examined his body, and finally took a breath of relief. Although he had many wounds, out of which only one was serious, the rest were only small pierces, cuts, and burns. The injury on his left shoulder was slightly serious, but that didn't hinder him from holding the sword in his right hand. "I guess I am alive thanks to you, huh?" Kuroto murmured as he sheathed the Kusanagi sword. This time, Kuroto was able to wipe out the entire unit of 16 Cloud Ninja at the cost of an injured left shoulder and only some cuts and burns. The credit definitely goes to the Kusanagi sword and the paralysis poison he compounded. One of the enemy Jonin didn't know about his Kusanagi sword and tried to block his slash with just a simple kunai. Obviously, the kunai couldn't resist and was divided like butter under a hot knife by his Tenseigan chakra-infused sword slash. As a result, one Jonin ninja died without any resistance in the face of Kuroto's attack. This not only decreased the strength of the enemy's side but also weakened their morale, which helped Kuroto finish off the rest of the bunch. After simply bandaging up the wound, Kuroto didn't dare to delay any longer and immediately rushed towards the retreat point. After all, they are still in the enemy territory. Every second of stay here will only bring danger to them. It didn't take long for him to arrive at the retreat point that Team 11 agreed upon. Guy and Shursui, who arrived earlier, saw Kuroto arrive and greeted him. "Finally here, Kuroto. How did it go on your side?" Kuroto said, "It took a little bit of effort to eliminate the enemies." Shursui nodded. "Well, I noticed before, Kuroto-san drew most enemy ninja away from the warehouse." Kuroto also glanced at Shursui and Guy, while asking casually, "How did it go on your end?" Both Guy and Shursui talked about the situation they faced separately. Since Guy was discovered earlier, so he could only lead away 8 enemy ninjas, which were only Chunin and Genin class, so after a fierce battle Guy eliminated them all. Among the 12 enemy ninjas that Shursui led away, although there was one Jonin, he was under Shursui's genjutsu from the very beginning. So, by the time he successfully broke through the effect of the genjutsu, the other ninjas were already lying in the pool of their own blood, which is to say Shursui had already killed them, and without any support from his teammates. The Jonin was obviously not Shursui's opponent, therefore not long after he fell under Shursui's blade. After hearing the description from both Guy and Shursui, Kuroto frowned. "So, if we combine the total number of ninjas we eliminated, it only reaches up to 80 people? More importantly, among them, only 3 of them were Jonin class, while the vast majority were Chunin class or cannon fodder class that are only useful for consuming enemy chakra." Listening to Kuroto's deductions, Guy was more worried about Kakashi. "Yes, so I am worried about Kakashi. How will he be able to deal against more than 100 enemy ninjas?" Shursui also stood silent. The current situation is very clear. Even if Kakashi is very strong, but there is absolutely no way he could survive against more than 100 Cloud Ninjas. Even if he somehow manages to destroy the warehouse, retreat would be impossible for him. Guy looked in the direction of the warehouse and said firmly, "We have to go and help him." Shursui also wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Currently, all 3 members of Team 11 are not only injured but they also don't have much chakra volume after a series of battles. They can't even be sure to safely escape to the land of fire from Cloud Village's follow-up pursuit. In such a situation, going back to the warehouse is simply a death wish. Seeing the worry in Guy and Shursui's eyes, Kuroto also looked towards the valley with slight hesitation. "I made a promise to him, I can't let it end here," was the only thought going on in his mind. At the valley. Taking a glance at the burning warehouse beside him, Kakashi squatted halfway in a pool of blood, with a relieved smile on his face. "Finally completed the task. No other companion will have to die for me." Whoosh. 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 At this time, more and more Cloud Shinobi rushed towards the burning warehouse with the body flicker technique, surrounding Kakashi from all sides. The head ninja of Cloud Village spoke with a murderous look on his face. "Konoha ninja, speak your name." Although the head ninja was very angered and wanted nothing more than to crush the brat under his feet, he still had to admire the kid's determination, so, to show his respect to the kid, he asked the kid's name before killing him. Kakashi tried raising his head to look at the person, but because of the excessive blood loss, his vision was getting blurry. He could only vaguely perceive the swaying firelight and the shadowy figure of the ninjas around him. At this moment he suddenly fell into a daze. This was a familiar feeling. I seem to have felt this before. Yeah, now I remember, it was during the Battle of the Canopy Bridge. Back then also I was surrounded by so many enemy ninjas. Unfortunately, Minato-sensei is no longer alive. No one will come to rescue me this time. I am sorry, father. I am sorry, Minato-sensei, I couldn't protect your son. Obito. Rin. We are finally going to meet again. Hehe, it seems to be a good ending. Slowly but steadily Kakashi felt the strength in his body fading away bit by bit. His thoughts drifted further and further, as if he was already past the shackles of the body. Seeing the tranced and lifeless look of the kid, the head ninja shook his head while sighing, then regaining the same cold look in his eyes he signaled the Chunin beside him to behead the kid. The Cloud Chunin immediately drew a kunai and walked towards the kid's direction. But after walking in front of the kid, this Cloud Chunin didn't make the killing move for a while. The head ninja urged impatiently, what's the hold-up? Finish him quickly, we have to also chase after the rest of his teammates. The secret warehouse has already been destroyed. If he doesn't chase after and successfully kill the Konoha ninjas responsible for this, then even if he is a qualified head ninja of the Cloud Village, he wouldn't escape Reikage-sama's anger. The Cloud Chunin stared at the weird-shaped eye in Kakashi's left eye socket and said while stumbling, but, his eye. However, before anyone could understand the Chunin's words, a figure wearing an eagle-faced mask suddenly flashed by, instantly beheading the Chunin who was standing in front of Kakashi, and then two more figures appeared on Kakashi's side, one with a dog-faced and the other with a cat-faced mask. Waving the sword to get the blood off of it, Eagle who was now standing in front of the kid said lightly, Dog, carry Kitsune on your back and leave. Dog hesitated but seeing that the Kitsune's consciousness was already blurry and he couldn't retreat alone, so, he carried the Kitsune on his back and said to Eagle and Cat, after dropping Kitsune to a safe place, I will come back soon. Cat smiles and shook his head, no, you make sure to take him back to the village, I and Eagle-san can handle it here. But, Dog wanted to interject. However, Eagle shouted with annoyance, get the hell out of here already before I change my mind. Obviously, the Eagle, Cat, and Dog are none other than Kuroto, Shisui, and Guy. With Kakashi being in a state of coma, Kuroto had temporarily taken over the position of captain of Team 11, so Guy didn't argue anymore, and immediately retreated while carrying the unconscious Kakashi on his back. How could the Cloud Ninjas present here allow the retreat? So, several teams immediately separated from the crowd here and chased after Guy. Neither Kuroto nor Shisui stopped this group, rather they couldn't. The head ninja of the Cloud Village took a look at Kuroto and Shisui standing guard and said with a smile, I have to admire your group of outstanding youngsters. Kuroto said coldly, thanks for the compliment but it was unnecessary. My name is Fuji, I am the commander of this garrison. After a short pause, Fuji continued, I really do admire you bunch of young ninjas of Konoha and your determination, but it's a pity that you all are going to die here, of course including the two brats who escaped. Kuroto did not bother to reply but glanced around him to analyze the situation they were in. Excluding the 4 squads that went after Guy, there are still more than 100 Cloud Ninjas surrounding him and Shisui, out of which at least a dozen of them have Jonin-class chakra volume. Moreover, the emergency signal has already been fired by the enemy. So, the reinforcements would already be rushing here from all directions, considering the importance of this place. Fuji noticed that the two kids still didn't give up hope in such a desperate situation. His admiration for them increased more and said with a wicked smile, I think Reikage-sama will definitely forgive me for being unable to guard this warehouse if I kill such excellent youngsters of Konoha. However, without losing his calm because of Fuji's words, Kuroto still stood silently waiting for a suitable opportunity. With the steady improvement in his strength, the effective range of rain-will interaction has increased to about 22 meters. If Kuroto decided to overexhaust his chakra without caring for the consequences, then give or take, 25 meters should be possible. Currently, Fuji is standing about 21 meters away from him, so he is within the effective range of rain-will interaction. But considering that the opponent is an elite Jonin of the Cloud Village, his strength is definitely not weak, so 21 meters is not a safe distance. Kuroto has to get at least at a distance of 15 meters to make sure that the attack works properly. While silently calculating his options, Kuroto took out a bottle of poison from his waist pouch. In the series of battles up to now, the poison he has applied on the blade of his sword has already been consumed, so he needs to repoison the blade. Previously, he forgot to do it because of the eagerness of rushing here. So, at this moment, he has no choice but to do it in a hurry while in the presence of so many enemies. Seeing Kuroto silently applying poison on the short sword, the Cloud ninjas glanced at each other feeling awkward. With frowned brows, Fuji asked the subordinate standing next to him, why hasn't Kurappa arrived yet? The reason why the Cloud ninjas haven't attacked them yet is that they are waiting for the torture ninja Kurappa to arrive. In Fuji's eyes, the two kids are already dead, so all their actions are meaningless. However, he would like to make good use of the two of them. At the very least they can extract some information from their heads through torture. Cloud Village doesn't have a secret technique that allows them to extract information from the brains of corpses, so they have to wait for the torture ninja Kurappa to arrive before doing anything. By then, even if the two kids are limbless or close to death, with Kurappa here, he would have enough time to conduct the interrogation. This abnormal behavior of Cloud Ninja didn't escape Shirsue's eyes. He whispered to Kuroto, Eagle-san, there seems to be something wrong with them. What are they waiting for? Obviously, Kuroto has also noticed this abnormality and knew that they couldn't wait any longer, so he said, Cat, when we attack, directly start with the Susanoo. Shirsue didn't ask why but nodded seriously. After instructing Shirsue, Kuroto lightly walked towards Fuji. Seeing one of the kids walking forward, Fuji suddenly had a bad feeling. He immediately shouted towards the Cloud ninjas, don't wait, do it. However, before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt huge unspeakable traction that pulled him towards the kid. In fact, not only him but with Kuroto as a center, everyone within 21 meters of the surrounding area, including Shirsue, everything was pulled towards Kuroto by this huge force. At this moment, Kuroto shouted while holding the Kusanagi sword in his right hand. 8 trigram, Heavenly Blade Rotation. Heavenly Blade Rotation is a crooked move he came up with after getting Kusanagi sword. According to his imagination, he would pull all the enemies around him using the rain will pull, and then he would use Kusanagi sword to perform Revolving Heaven. To achieve both the offense and defense, with Revolving Heaven as defense and Blade Rotation as the offense. The only problem is that he hasn't practiced this move before, so in this desperate situation, he can only try to create it out of scratch. The huge force of rain pull attracted so many ninjas, let alone the enemy side. Even Shirsue was shocked. Although he has seen Kuroto-san use this move before against Morio, it's the first time he has experienced personally just how it feels being under its effect. Fortunately for him, Kuroto-san has already instructed him, so without panicking, he directly opened Menjikyu and used the Susanoo. Slash. 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 The sound of the blade slashing through the air brought everyone out of the daze. Those that came into the range of rain pull, Heavenly Blade Rotation were injured by the Kusanagi blade at varying degrees. Except for Shirsue under Susanoo's protection, everyone else took the attack by the Kusanagi sword without exception. After stopping Heavenly Blade Rotation, Kuroto panted heavily due to chakra overdraft and observed the result. The use of such large-scale attacks consumes too much chakra, and now he is in an exhausted state, so he had to make sure that at the very least Fuji, their commander, has to be dead from his attack. But contrary to what he expected, among the Cloud ninjas who were cut by the Kusanagi sword, all of the ninjas with Jonin-class chakra turned into lightning. Lightning-style shadow clone. Kuroto's heart was shaken. Dojutsus are unable to differentiate or identify shadow clones. Even Kakashi used a lightning-style shadow clone to deceive pain, and it worked even against the Rinnegan. And now that this technique was used against him, not to mention in such a desperate situation, Kuroto is obviously not very pleased about it. Kuroto has never seen a lightning-style shadow clone before, so he couldn't judge that all the Cloud Jonin in front of him, including the Commander Fuji, were just some clones. While Kuroto was in a panicked state, Fuji and the other Cloud who lost the lightning clone came out of the shadows. Fuji observed Shirsue's Susanoo with interest and smiled, oh, it appears I was looking down on you too. Sure enough, if Konoha can send such young kids for suicide missions into the hinterland of the enemy territory, they would have to have some unusual means, huh? Kuroto observed Fuji, who walked out of the shadows with a solemn expression. It was his first time using Heavenly Blade Rotation. To ensure the smoothness of rotation and to balance out the inconsistencies between the sword and the palm, Kuroto consumed a lot of his chakra. Adding the chakra he consumed in Rain Will Pull and all the battles up to now, he has very little chakra left currently. As long as he could have killed or even injured Fuji and the other Cloud Jonin ninja, it would have been worth it. After all, without Jonin support, whether he and Shirsue fight or retreat would be up to them. But now that the surprise attack failed to work, their situation is not good. Kuroto glanced at Shirsue from the corner of his eyes. It looks as if Shirsue inside the Susanoo is already out of breath. Obviously, the previous battles consumed a lot of his chakra, and coupled with the burden Manjikyu has on his young self, his situation isn't very good. While Kuroto was storming out his brain to think of something, Fuji shouted, "Do it!" Following Fuji's call, the surrounding ninjas immediately launched attacks. Kuroto quickly shot a few shurikens to kill the already injured Chunin and Genin, then leaped back to retreat into the armor of Susanoo. Boom! 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 As soon as Kuroto retreated, the attacks from Cloud Shinobi caused a series of violent explosions. After the smoke cleared, the skeletal figure of Susanoo remained unaffected, leaving Shisui and Kuroto inside unharmed. Fuji was extremely surprised by this. The Susanoo of the Uchiha clan hasn't appeared in the shinobi world for many years, so even the elites like Fuji do not know what the Green Phantom figure is. But this does not stop him from making his judgment about this. As far as Fuji thinks, whether it was the strange technique used by the kid with the eagle mask or this Green Phantom type jutsu, they are very powerful and strange jutsu, which is definitely not something ordinary ninjas can master. Considering that both the kids are too young, these jutsu have to be some kind of Kekai Genkai. And the body of a ninja with a Kekai Genkai is an information library, so although very shocked and surprised, he is even more anxious to take down the two kids. Trap them with earth release, and attack with fire and wind release. And do not stop, keep attacking. While giving several orders, he backed away slightly. Earth Style Barrier, Earth Dome Release Technique. Earth Style, Great Mud Wall Technique. Fire Style, Fire Dragon Bullet Technique. Wind Style, Great Breakthrough Technique. Following Fuji's order, the Cloud Ninjas immediately surrounded the Susanoo structure from the four sides and launched jutsu one after another. Instantly a series of earth wall rose from the ground, cutting off any possible escape route. A combination of fire release and wind release covered the entire sky in flames, and like a sea of fire, rushed towards Susanoo. At the same time, Shisui gritted his teeth and used his Susanoo secret technique. Susanoo, Tsukumo. With Shisui's shout, the Susanoo opened its ribcage to expose its chest, launching a barrage of large, green-colored chakra needles at an incredible speed. And how could Kuroto silently watch? So, while still being inside Susanoo's defense, he fired several kunai wrapped in detonation charm, shurikens, senbons, etc. Boom! 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 The resulting violent explosion due to the collision of jutsu shook the whole area. Countless ninjutsu, throwing tools, detonation charm, chakra needles turned the entire valley into a fiery ground. The smoke gradually dissipated, and the scene of the battlefield was revealed. The earth wall and dungeon created by the Cloud Ninjas was completely damaged. Dozens of Cloud Ninjas in the range of Susanoo Tsukumo's barrage suffered heavy casualties. But the Susanoo that shielded Kuroto and Shisui from all the attacks, although fading slightly, still remained unscathed. It's just that Shisui was already kneeling on the ground at this moment, coughing up violently. It looks impossible for him to keep the Susanoo active for much longer. Fuji, who was hidden in the distance, carefully observed the Susanoo, and Shisui within it as he secretly said, "Such terrifying ninjutsu. Although this is the first time I have seen such a technique, the chakra consumption has to be severe. From the looks of it, the kid can't bear it any longer." From standing unharmed against the attacks of Cloud Ninjas just now, Susanoo has proved its unparalleled defense. If an ordinary ninja encounters such a powerful enemy, then it wouldn't be strange if her nerves will freeze from the chakra pressure alone. Even Fuji is the same in its presence, but his desire to redeem himself is letting him bear the pressure. Moreover, he knows that this is the territory of Lightning Country and the reinforcements from the surroundings will be coming at any moment. So, no matter how strong the enemy might be, it will never be possible for these two brats to leave here alive. No matter how strong the defense, no matter how strong the offense, even the third Raikage-sama died in the face of countless enemy ninja, and these two are just some brats. It can block attacks from all directions. From the looks of it, this chakra phantom can't be broken from the outside. Is there no other method? As if suddenly thinking of something, if it's not possible to attack from the above, will it possible to break through it from the ground? Thinking so, Fuji printed several hand seals and then pressed his hands on the ground. Inside Susanoo's armor. While coughing violently, Shisui weakly said, "Kuroto-san, I can't hold it any longer, please, you have to retreat. I will make sure there is no follow-up pursuit from here." Kuroto was also catching his breath, shook his head. It's not yet time to give up Shisui. Although they are in a dire situation, it is still not worse enough to feel despair. Kuroto still has the secret technique of physical regeneration at his arsenal that he got from Orochimaru. As long as he doesn't hesitate to overdraft his life, he can recover from his injuries, and chakra can also be extracted from the newly formed cells. Once that's done, they can just escape using the flying ability of the Kazekage puppet. As for the matter of being exposed, they are already in such a dire situation, so he can't care much. If he dies here, what good will keeping the Kazekage puppet a secret does? Just as Kuroto stretched his hand into the ninja bag to take out the Kazekage puppet scroll, he suddenly felt a slight vibration under his feet. Even before he could check for the source, a small crack appeared just below his feet, out of which a lightning snake shot out, rushing straight towards him. What? Kuroto was already in an exhausted state, coupled with several injuries, he couldn't react fast enough to dodge, and the same was Shirsue's situation as both of them were attacked by lightning snakes. Instantly they were paralyzed due to being shocked, as a result of which Shirsue's Susanoo that was already fading now completely disappeared. Ha ha ha. Finally got rid of that troublesome jutsu. Seeing that the attack succeeds, Fuji, who was hiding in the distance, couldn't stop himself from laughing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, one after another, figures of more than 100 cloud ninjas as reinforcements appeared at the valley. Upon seeing the chaos in the valley, the secret warehouse being submerged in the blazing fire, as well as the corpses of cloud ninjas lying all over the place, these cloud ninjas who came to support couldn't help but be shocked. The leader of Command Kurappa directly questioned Fuji, who was responsible for guarding the secret warehouse. Fuji, what the hell is going on here? Why didn't you protect the secret warehouse? Fuji could only helplessly reply, we were attacked by Konoha's elite troops. Elite troops? Kurappa curled his lips in anger and spoke while pointing his finger towards the injured and paralyzed Kuroto and Shirsue, just two brats? You dare call them Konoha's elite troops? Have you become so incompetent, that you can't even deal with two little devils? Fuji snorted at Kurappa's words, just two little devils. Humph, take a good look around you, these two little devils killed more than 200 of us. Upon hearing Fuji's words, Kurappa and other cloud ninjas looked around and found that only the corpses of cloud ninjas were lying all around, in the entire valley. Aside from the paralyzed Kuroto and Shirsue, there was no sign of any other Konoha shinobi, whether dead or alive. With this alone, Kurappa realized that for these two brats to have done such serious damage on their side, they are indeed not so simple as you would expect considering their young age, so, he immediately stated, I will torture out all the information in their heads, while the rest watch out for the reinforcement from the enemy sides. Fuji only shrugged, do as you please, two more of the brats have escaped, I am going to pursue them now. Kuroto, who was injured due to the lightning snake, couldn't even use the slightest of his strength. Seeing the arrival of enemy reinforcements, even if he tried to force it, his heart couldn't stay calm. As Kurappa was walking towards him, Kuroto felt more and more danger. He tried thinking of whatever he could use, but there was no solution he could arrive at. Is this really it? I made a promise to him. I can't let it end here. This was the only thought going into his mind, but unfortunately, there were no signs of hope. Something, anything. As if hearing Kuroto's plea, he suddenly felt an unfamiliar force surging. This is... The power seemed to be hidden far away in the sky, yet it seemed especially close to him. What surprised him more was the kindness it directed towards him along with the huge amount of energy. Yes, it was the kindness of a father. A grandfather. Their forefather, or maybe a distant ancestor. This energy that seemed within his reach yet out of his control attracted all his attention. It reignited his desire to survive, reminded him of the thought of surviving from death and accomplish what he dreams of. With this reignited hope, Kuroto tried to raise his hand with all the strength he could muster. Kurappa, who was walking towards him, sneered as he saw Kuroto struggling to move. Don't struggle, brat, after getting what I want, I will let you die without pain. Shirsue on the side also looked at struggling Kuroto. He believes that Kuroto-kun wouldn't do any meaningless action, so he was ready to sacrifice a Manjikyu by using Koto Ematsukami to control Kurappa. Because of the lack of chakra, it is obviously impossible for Shirsue to use Koto Ematsukami normally, so the only option he has left is to use it forcibly by sacrificing one eye. But as long as Kurappa is controlled, he and Kuroto-kun will be able to escape from here, so it is undoubtedly worth it. He had already started accumulating pupil power in his left eye. However, before he could fully launch the strongest genjutsu, Kuroto, who finally managed to raise his hand, grabbed the non-existent space. Seeing Kuroto's action, Kurappa raised the corner of one eye while thinking to himself, is consciousness so blurred? That's good, it would be much easier to extract information from. However, before he could finish the thought, something happened that left him stunned. Not only Kurappa but all the surrounding cloud ninjas, even Fuji who was about to leave to follow up after Guy and Kakashi, as well as Shisui who was gathering pupil power in his left eye to cast Koto Ematsukami were stunned. In everyone's perception, as soon as Kuroto's grabbed into the void, a huge chakra reaction erupted from his body, shining like a pillar of blue light illuminating the night sky. The chakra reaction was so great that both Kurappa and Fuji who had seen a tailed beast were shaken. As soon as the chakra erupted, his body started floating up and visible to the naked eye. All the injuries and numbness on his body disappeared instantly and was replaced by a feeling of overwhelming and endless power. What the hell is going on? Honestly, Kuroto was no less shocked than the others. Although he felt the kindness and acceptance from this force, he was certain it wasn't the power of his Tenseigan. Before he could make any judgments, some images started to appear in his mind. It's hand seal printing. Kuroto did not know what this hand seal printing method is used for. Just out of the instinctual trust he felt towards the source, he performed the seals one by one according to the images he saw. Ram, tiger, boar, tiger. Whoosh! As soon as he completed the hand seal printing, Kuroto gained a cyan-colored chakra shroud with 6 magatamas marking on his collar, dark markings over his eyebrows, and lower eyelids. The shroud constantly radiated flickering flames of chakra, and his clothing and hair continuously billowed upwards as if caught in an upward breeze as he floated in mid-air akin to a god. And that's not it. Immediately afterwards, several orbs of black malleable chakra flashed from the center of his eyebrows, and floated around him. Tenseigan Chakra Mode. The printing method just now was to turn on the Tenseigan Chakra Mode. Kuroto was out of his wits as he discovered the state he was in. It was only now that he understood the source of the energy that is helping him. He still couldn't help but think as to why did it help him out right now. But it was obviously not the time for him to entangle himself in these things. Suppressing all the mixed thoughts in his heart, and directing all his attention towards the only objective in front of him, Kuroto made sure that he must eliminate all the cloud ninja here, not only to ensure his and Shirsue's safety but also to make sure there are no witnesses left to remember the events that took place here, to ensure that his Tenseigan doesn't get exposed. After making up his mind, Kuroto pointed his hand towards Shisui and dragged him along with the ground he was sitting on into the air, all while his other hand was slowly raised and aimed in the direction of the valley. The 9 truth-seeking balls floating around him immediately merged, as he focused his chakra through them, and muttered in an emotionless tone, "Silver will reincarnation explosion." Following Kuroto's call to chakra, he focused on the truth-seeking balls, created a powerful silvery typhoon, and the target of this gust was the entire valley along with all the cloud shinobi. On the moon. In the Otsutsuki family hall. A gray-haired, old man suddenly opened his cloudy white eyes, and muttered in a surprised tone, "Who is using the power of the giant Tenseigan?" Without any hesitation, he immediately got up and rushed towards the temple. At the same time, 2 more elders also rushed towards the temple just like him. What is happening? Who is drawing chakra from the Tenseigan? Only 3 of us can control the Tenseigan, then how come? The oldest of the 3 said at this time, "No matter who is it, firstly put a seal on the Tenseigan and cut off any external chakra output." Yes. Having decided the course, the 3 of them made several hand seals, then spoke in a unison, "Fuin Kekai." With the combined seal from the 3 elders, the twinkling of the giant Tenseigan dimmed slightly. Boom! The huge storm made by the silver will reincarnation explosion instantly swept the entire valley. In such a fierce storm, whether they were elites like Fuji, Kurappa, other Jonin, or the Chunin and Genin, everyone was like rootless duckweed. Nothing more than tiny little ants. Not only the cloud ninjas but countless big trees were also uprooted, huge rocks were turned into dust, buildings and sentry posts and many other things all disintegrated into debris at the first contact with the storm. The entire valley was like a drawing on a piece of paper that was wiped clean by the eraser named Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion, and nothing but a blank was left. Not enough. Still not enough. Kuroto still doesn't have any plans to stop. Although the entire valley has been razed to the ground by him, there were still many chakra reactions he could perceive with the Tenseigan. This only meant that there were still many survivors left. These survivors must not stay alive. If even a single one of them manages to escape, Cloud Village will come to know of my Tenseigan. Cloud Village has done a lot of shameless actions to steal the secrets of the other villages, attempted to kidnap Uzumaki Kushina, and even Hyuga Hinata for studying the Ikugen. Who knows what they will plot against him. So, nobody can be allowed to stay alive. Shisui, who was sitting on a piece of floating rock beside Kuroto, was in a daze at the scene in front of him. It has been several minutes, and this expression hasn't changed. Is this Kuroto-san's true strength? No matter how humble he may be, Shisui still has deep pride within him. But now that he saw such a large-scale and powerful technique used by Kuroto, he suddenly lost confidence in his Menjikyu. Can Susanoo be comparable to something like that? This was the only question being repeated in his mind again and again. This was the moment his pride was completely torn apart and his reverence towards Kuroto-kun increased exponentially. Kuroto, who was still busy killing every cloud shinobi, didn't notice the change in Shisui's mentality. But suddenly, the endless source of chakra was cut off. The power and chakra that was overflowing in his body seemed to be hollowed out all of a sudden. This happened so quickly that he couldn't even react to it. He has long since realized that the source of this chakra must be the giant Tenseigan on the moon. Such kindness could only be felt from Himura. Precisely because he realized the source of the chakra, so he did his best to transfer as much as he can in Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion, because he knows that the Otsutsuki clan on the moon wouldn't allow the Himura's chakra to be used by anyone but their own, so this was most likely a once-in-a-lifetime chance. However, the members of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon reacted too quickly. From the time when the resonance between his Tenseigan with the giant Tenseigan began, only a few minutes have passed and they already cut off the chakra supply. However, he can't stop now. There are still some life sources left. Can't stop now. Before killing every cloud ninja, he could not let the Tenseigan chakra mode fade away, even if he has to overdraw his vitality. Gritting his teeth, he insisted on using the secret technique of physical regeneration. According to the rough estimation, it would take only about 13 more seconds to completely flatten the valley. Not to mention the humans, even the rats, and ants hiding in the ground must not be left alive. But without the support of the giant Tenseigan on the moon, Kuroto was already overwhelmed by the fatigue, and his consciousness started getting blurry. Have to stay awake. 7, 6, 5, 4. With the heavy eyelids he couldn't keep open, Kuroto somehow managed to sense the remaining chakra reaction in the valley. 3, 2, and the last one. With the disappearance of the chakra source of the last enemy ninja, Kuroto forced himself to stay awake to confirm no more people were left alive in the valley. Now, he finally couldn't hold up anymore and fell to the ground along with Shisui while coughing out blood. Even before he could lift off the Tenseigan chakra mode, it automatically wore off, and with it, the Tenseigan in his eye socket also turned into Byakaigan. Shisui somehow managed to get up and quickly checked up on Kuroto's condition. Kuroto-kun, how are you doing? Heh. Don't worry, I am only tired, and injured. Just leave this place before any more enemy forces arrive, Kuroto said as he lost consciousness. Shisui nodded, and while carrying unconscious Kuroto on his back, fled towards the border of the Land of Frost. Not long after Kuroto and Shisui left, several more groups of cloud ninjas rushed to the valley from all directions. Of course, this place couldn't be considered a valley anymore. Because wherever the eyes could see, it was all a straight plain. It almost felt like a giant plowed the land with a shovel. The arriving cloud ninjas were confused looking at the situation around. We didn't come to the wrong place, did we? Didn't the map stated that it should be valley around? No, you idiot, how could we come wrong? This is the place where the emergency signal came from. Then where is anyone? Where is the secret warehouse? One by one cloud ninjas were confused by such a development. At this time, a jonin stood up and shouted, "Assholes, what are you all doing standing around in a daze? Hurry up and find any survivors, I want to know what in the god's name happened here." The ninjas came out of their stupor and reacted immediately as they dispersed one after another, trying to find any source of information that could be useful. But over and over again, no matter how much they explored or dug the muddy ground, they found nothing but mutilated corpses, and without exception, each of them belonged to the shinobi of Cloud Village. What, not even a single enemy corpse was found. Hearing such a report, the jonin leader was more panicked. While pointing at the rows and rows of corpses that had been gathered in front of him, he said tremblingly, "Impossible, how could so many of our die and not even any sign of any enemy around? Search everywhere, I want 4-man squads to search in every direction and find any trace that the enemy might have left." Yes. Just what in the hell did they fought against? Was the only question in his mind. On the moon. After cutting off the chakra supply of the giant Tenseigan, the three elders now discussed the possible cause for such a thing to happen. Elder 1 said, "This time giant Tenseigan acted too strange, I suspect it has something to do with the person who stole the ghetto statue before." Elder 2 was shocked and angry, he dares to try to steal the treasure of Otsutsuki's. Elder 3, who was the eldest of all, remained slightly calm and said after some thinking, it would be better to use the giant Tenseigan to see. The change now was indeed quite unusual, maybe something happened in the ninja world. Elder 1 and Elder 2 nodded at Elder 3's words and immediately made some hand seals, enlighten. The now dim Tenseigan once again bloomed in the brilliant light, and as per Elder's sealing, spread a light curtain into the earth. On the earth, Kuroto, who was resting on Shirsue's back as they both fled towards the land of frost, suddenly felt the familiar chakra of the giant Tenseigan swept over him, and this brought him out of his sleep, making him highly alert. However, since his Tenseigan faded and turned into Byakugan because of the depletion of chakra, the chakra curtain of the giant Tenseigan did not stay on him for longer than an instant and went past him as if it didn't recognize him at all. A few days later. Land of hot water. Kakashi and Guy, who were unconscious, lay side by side on the ground inside a small cave, while Kuroto sat on the side and Shisui was sitting at the campfire busy cooking. Stirring the small pot on the fire, Shisui whispered, "Kuroto-san, the soup is just about ready." Kuroto nodded eagerly, he was really hungry right now. Although he still has military ration pills left with him, their taste is just too awful. Now, it's not that Kuroto hates eating it, but like most other shinobi, he would also prefer eating something delicious like fish soup over the tasteless military ration pills. Without much delay, Shisui brought a bowl of fresh steaming fish soup for Kuroto. While drinking the soup, Kuroto looked over towards Kakashi and Guy, who were lying unconscious. It's funny to think that Guy, who retreated first with Kakashi on Kuroto's orders, was more injured than him and Shisui. But it's not that strange if you think about it. Even if Kuroto and Shisui tried their best, they were unable to stop any follow-up chase after Guy. As a result, he was intercepted by Cloud ninjas and had no choice other than to use Hashiman Tanku. Hashiman Tanku is a forbidden jutsu that damages the enemy 1000 points and injures oneself by 800 points, so although Guy successfully managed to repel the enemy shinobi, he was also injured severely. On the other hand, Kakashi's situation is even more complicated. Although Kakashi has serious injuries and excessive blood loss, the reason for him being in a coma is something else. As for what that reason might be, Kuroto has no idea for the time being. He doesn't even have much time to worry about Kakashi right now, as his own troubles have not been solved yet. Crack. For some reason, Kuroto suddenly wrinkled his eyebrows, and the bowl in his hand fell to the ground, breaking into several fragments, which alerted Shisui. Shisui suddenly asked, "Kuroto-san, are you alright? Did something happen? Is there anyone approaching here?" Kuroto only shook his head negatively with a sullen face. Nothing happened. After reassuring Shisui one more time, Kuroto turned to look outside the cave. The night sky outside was very charming. Bright stars like diamonds filled the night sky. Bright and soft moonlight only enhanced this beauty, making it all feel surreal. Looking at such a charming night, Kuroto can only sigh as he was worried about something else. Did that small incident shock them so much? Kuroto thinks so only because just a few moments ago the search curtain of Tenseigan chakra again went past them. He wouldn't have even noticed this if not for the fact that he is now familiar with Hamura's chakra. Shisui, sitting beside him, didn't react all. This just goes to show how secretive the chakra search of the giant Tenseigan is. Even Shisui with the Manjikyu can't perceive it at all. This has already been the 7th time today. Why haven't they given up yet? Wasn't it just some tiny amount of chakra? Why can't they let go of this for once? Kuroto thought. He is very annoyed by this, but he knows that the last members of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon are all pure radicals. Obviously, they misunderstood Hamura, thinking that the shinobi world created by the Sage of the Sixth Path is nothing more than a failure, and took it upon themselves to destroy and recreate the world. If they come to know about his existence, Kuroto can't even to begin thinking of what might be the consequences. Moreover, now he, who has borrowed the chakra from the giant Tenseigan, knows better than anyone just how powerful giant Tenseigan is. It wouldn't be wrong to say that it is undoubtedly a supreme treasure that belongs to the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. Even Kuroto with the Tenseigan only barely managed to resonate with its chakra in a near-death state, while those Otsutsuki descendants can freely use it as per their wish. From just this alone it can be seen that the Otsutsuki clan on the moon has a much higher authority than the Hyuga clan. And if they come after him, what Kuroto would have to face will be the onslaught from the giant Tenseigan, which is thousands of times superior to him in terms of both the quality as well as quantity of chakra. The result isn't that hard to figure out. Honestly, Kuroto even thinks that he is quite lucky. Fortunately, his Tenseigan went into temporary dormancy due to chakra exhaustion, bringing back the Byakugan. Otherwise, he would have had no method to avoid giant Tenseigan's search. On the moon. Cough. After a short cough, Elder 1 resealed the giant Tenseigan and shook his head negatively. When Elder 2 saw this, his brows tightened, still nothing. Elder 1 calmed down his coughs, then said slowly, apart from the forbidden spots, there is no other abnormality in the shinobi world. The last descendants of Otsutsuki have desired to destroy the shinobi world long since. It's just that, using giant Tenseigan's regular explorations of the shinobi world, they have found several places where the light of the Tenseigan is unable to reach, therefore the Otsutsuki have close to no information about these places, and termed them collectively as forbidden spots. Some of these forbidden spots are densely filled by natural energy, some are occupied by weird extraterritorial forces, while the others have been contaminated with evil energy. Due to these reasons, the Otsutsukis have hesitated to make a move up to now. Now there aren't many people left on the moon, except for the 3 elders. There is only a 3-year-old child named Tonari and his father left. Their current power is not enough to smoothly destroy the entire shinobi world, so no matter how radical they may be, the elders can only endure and choose to wait for the right opportunity, or wait for Tonari to grow up and fulfill Himura's wish. Elder 3 asked at this moment, what about the ghetto statue? Is there any finding of it? Elder 3 asked this because they did manage to briefly sense the ghetto statue a few years ago, but before they could use the Tenseigan to search, the induction disappeared, so the elders could only stay disappointed for not being able to find its exact location. Elder 1 again shook his head at Elder 3's question. Elder 2, who is the most radical of all, stood up from the futon. Are we just going to watch and do nothing? Elder 3 calmly said, we have grown too old and don't have enough strength to fulfill Himura's last wish. Let Tonari take this important task. He is the most gifted child the Otsutsuki has ever witnessed. If it is him, he would definitely be able to fulfill it. Elder 1 tentatively suggested, we may be able to seek help from the Hyuga clan. After all, they also have the same blood as us. Elder 2 snorted coldly, Hyuga. No. They are fallen people, they are unworthy, and their fate will be the same as the rest of the shinobi world. They are part of the failed world created by the Sage of the 6 Paths, so they too have to perish along with it. Elder 3 thought of suggesting that if all of the people were exterminated, then the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, which is already close to extinction, wouldn't escape this fate as well, but seeing the decisive look of Elder 2, he chooses to sigh and let go. In the final analysis, all 3 of them share the same thought, that the Hyuga clan is really unworthy of being compared to the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.